You say you have no time. I say you are lying, not to me, but to yourself. Every person out there has the same 24 hours. The slave, the senator, the merchant. Yet one feels imprisoned by the day and another feels master of it. The difference is not arithmetic, it is attention. The question before you is not, how do I find more time? The real question is, who has stolen my attention and why have I allowed it? You live in a condition your ancestors would have found incomprehensible. Not poverty, not scarcity, the opposite. You are drowning in access. 100 voices call to you at once. 10,000 tasks claim priority. Your device, that small oracle in your pocket, has become a master that summons you at all hours, and you have convinced yourself that responding to its call is obligation and not choice. You call this being busy. You call this success. You mistake motion for movement. Here's what I observe. You have never been more occupied, yet never more empty. You have filled every gap with noise, every silence with stimulation. You measure your worth by what you have done, not by what you've chosen to do. And in that confusion, in that surrender of choice to compulsion, you have lost something more valuable than time itself. You have lost yourself. The crisis is not that you are busy. The crisis is that you believe busyness is the price of mattering. The problem you face is not scarcity of time, but capture of attention. And until you understand the difference, no schedule, no app, no productivity system will liberate you. Let me show you what's actually happening. When you say you are busy, what you mean is this. Something outside yourself has claimed the right to interrupt your attention. You did not choose to think about that email. The notification chose for you. You did not decide to scroll through endless images of others' lives. The algorithm decided that for you. You did not wake up wanting to attend that meeting. The calendar, built by someone else's priorities, demanded it. This is not busyness. This is conscription, and you volunteered. I spent years watching men in Rome who believed themselves indispensable. They ran from the Senate to their estates, to the forum, to their patrons' homes. They never stopped, they never rested. And I watched something curious happen. The more they ran, the less they actually accomplished anything of value. They became servants to the appearance of importance. One man in particular, I will not name him, as the lesson applies to many, owned vast lands, held high office, commanded respect. Yet he could not read a single book without interruption. He could not have 1 hour of genuine thought. He had so committed himself to the demands of his position that he had forgotten why he had sought the position in the first place. Here is the pattern I want you to see. When you give your attention to everything, you give your attention to nothing. There are really only 3 patterns at work in how attention gets stolen from you. If you can name them, you can begin to resist them. The first, urgency is a spell. Not all urgent things are important, but urgency feels important. It creates a sensation of crisis, and in crisis you stop thinking, you simply react. Your device knows this. Your workplace knows this. Urgency is the simplest tool to capture attention because it short-circuits your will. You do not decide to respond to the urgent email, you feel compelled to respond. The feeling of compulsion is so strong that you mistake it for responsibility. Let me ask you this. How many of the urgent demands on your time last year do you remember? How many actually mattered? Most have vanished. Yet in the moment, each one felt like it could not wait. Here is the principle. Everything that feels urgent is not. Everything that matters rarely feels urgent in the moment. If you can separate the two, you will have taken the first step towards reclaiming your attention. A man I knew, a merchant, received messages throughout the day about prices, shipments, complaints from customers. Each message arrived with the assumption that it required immediate response. He finally asked a simple question. What is the actual consequence if I do not respond in the next hour? The answer was almost always none. The urgency was manufactured. It was a habit, not a law. So here's what you do. Before you respond to anything urgent, ask yourself, will this matter in a year? If the answer is no, you have just identified an imposter wearing the mask of importance. The second, fragmentation as comfort. You know what happens when a mind is fragmented? It stops thinking, and the absence of thinking feels like relief. To think deeply, To actually contemplate something, to hold the problem in your mind and turn it slowly like a gem looking for light, requires sustained attention. It is uncomfortable. Your mind resists it. It prefers distraction. So you've built an entire civilization around fragmentation. You call it staying informed. You call it staying connected. In truth, you have become addicted to the feeling of switching. Each new input, each new notification, each new task gives your mind a small stimulus. It is not deep, it is not nourishing, but it is immediate. And your mind, exhausted from the demand for depth, settles for the habit of distraction. This is not accidental. You have been engineered. The people who built these systems understand the architecture of attention far better than you do. They know that sustained focus is the enemy of engagement, because engagement means you are consuming, clicking, returning, staying. So they have designed everything to fracture your focus. Here is the hard truth. You are not weak for being distracted. You are weak because you have become comfortable with distraction, and you are now afraid of what sustained attention might demand of you. Think of attention as an estate. When you tend it carefully, plant what you choose, protect its boundaries, it produces something of value. But if you leave the gates open, if you allow every wanderer to come in and plant seeds, if you never say no to a single request, that estate becomes a wasteland, not because of scarcity, but because of invasion. The remedy is not productivity systems. The remedy is selection. You must choose what deserves your attention, and then you must defend that choice ferociously. A writer I knew complained that he had no time to write, yet when I asked him to account for his hours, I discovered he spent 3 hours each day responding to others' demands, 2 hours consuming news, 1 hour in meetings he neither needed nor wanted to attend. He had 12 hours of free time and told himself he lacked time to write. The problem was not scarcity, the problem was that he never declared writing to be non-negotiable, so it remained perpetually displaced by things that felt more urgent. The principle is this: if something is not protected, it will be invaded. You must build walls around what matters. The third, substitution as self-deception. This is the most insidious pattern because it allows you to feel virtuous while surrendering. You tell yourself you are building something. You call the endless tasks work. You call responding to others' demands service or collaboration. You have renamed passivity as productivity. And because you have a word for it, because you can say I am working, you believe you are choosing. But substitution is when you accept small tasks in place of significant ones. You do not write the book, you respond to emails about writing. You do not build the business, you attend meetings about building the business. You do not develop your craft, you consume content about developing craft. The pattern is this: you do the thing that appears to be work instead of the thing that is work. And here's why. The thing that is real work is difficult. It requires sustained attention. It requires you to fail, to struggle, to sit with uncertainty. The substitute task is easy. It creates the illusion of progress without the cost of genuine effort. A young woman came to me once, frustrated that she had not published her research despite working constantly. When I asked her what filled her day, she described meetings, reviews of others' work, and administrative tasks. Necessary things, but nowhere in that list was an hour devoted to her own research. She had been working constantly, but not on the thing that mattered. Here is what I told her. Time cannot be reclaimed. It can only be reclaimed through sacrifice. You must give up something real in order to protect something meaningful. She resisted, of course. She said all those tasks were necessary. I asked her, necessary for what? For others' agendas or for yours? That question changed how she saw her days. Now I hear you thinking, but Seneca, I cannot simply abandon my responsibilities. I have obligations. This is true, and this is also the most common excuse for never doing anything significant. You will always have obligations. You will always be able to name reasons why you cannot begin. The question is not whether reason exists. The question is whether you are willing to choose despite the reasons. The people who accomplish something meaningful do not wait for conditions to be perfect. They do not wait until all obligations are discharged. Those obligations are endless. They decide that something matters more than the comfort of compliance, and then they protect that decision. Now you might ask, but without responding to urgency, without staying fragmented, without doing the tasks others assign, won't I lose status? Perhaps, but here is what you'll not lose: yourself. And here is what you'll gain: the ability to do something that actually matters. Status earned through busyness is borrowed status. It depends on your continued performance of busyness. The moment you stop, the status evaporates. You have built your worth on sand. Whereas the person who says no to distraction, who protects their attention, who chooses what they will do, that person builds something that does not depend on constant performance. It depends on actual accomplishment. The paradox is this. The people who accomplish the most appear, to the busy person, to be doing very little. They work less visibly. They attend fewer meetings. They respond to fewer messages. And because their work is not visible, because it is not fragmented across 100 small tasks, the busy person dismisses them as lazy. But the work that is not visible is the work that matters. You might also object, isn't this just privilege? Doesn't this assume I have the luxury of choice? This deserves a serious answer. Many people genuinely have limited choices. They must work multiple jobs. They must care for others. Their circumstances are constrained. But even in constraint, there is a difference between necessary obligation and chosen fragmentation. Let me be clear. If you are working multiple jobs simply to survive, this is not a failure of attention on your part. This is a failure of a system that has not provided you with basic security. That is a different problem, and it is real. But most of you are not in that position. Most of you have some choice, and you exercise that choice in ways that erode your own time. You say yes when you could say no. You check your device when you could leave it alone. You attend meetings that you could decline. You follow paths that others have laid out because it is easier than choosing your own. The fact that constraints exist does not mean you have none. The fact that you cannot control everything does not mean you control nothing. So the objection is partly valid and partly an excuse. Let me show you the pattern beneath what I have described. There are 3 patterns of recovery that allow you to resist the capture of your attention. The first is clarity of purpose, not vague aspiration, clarity. You must know with precision what you are trying to build or become, not what others expect you to build, not what seems prestigious, what actually calls you. This clarity becomes your compass. Every demand on your time can then be measured against it. Does this serve the purpose? If no, it's a distraction. The second is the economy of attention. You cannot attend to everything. You must choose. And having chosen, you must defend it. This means protecting hours, setting boundaries, saying no to good things in order to say yes to necessary things. This is not unkind. It is honest. The people who matter to you will understand that your fierceness about your time is not fierceness about them. The third is the practice of subtraction. You do not need to add more systems, more disciplines, more techniques. You need to remove what is not serving you. Stop reading the news if it does not inform something you are building. Stop attending meetings that could have been emails. Stop responding to messages that are not addressed to you. Stop checking devices that you do not need. The freedom comes not from optimization, but elimination. Each of these is simple to state. Each is brutally difficult to practice because it requires you to disappoint others. It requires you to accept that you cannot do everything. It requires you to choose, and in choosing, to exclude. But here is what becomes possible when you do. You become capable of actual work, real work that requires sustained attention, deep thought, creative struggle, work that builds something rather than simply responding to everything. Before we end, here's what you are going to do. This is not a list of productivity hacks. These are refusals, practices of protection. Tomorrow morning, before you check any device, before you read any message, before any urgency can reach you, spend 30 minutes on one thing you have decided matters. Not thinking about it, doing it, writing it, building it, struggling with it. This is non-negotiable. Everything else happens after this. Then identify one recurring demand on your time that does not serve your purpose. A meeting, a practice, a habit. This week you will refuse it. Not rudely, clearly. This no longer serves what I am building. I am stepping back. You'll discover that the world does not collapse. Then build a barrier between you and interruption. If you use a device for work, you will set specific hours when messages can reach you. Not all hours, specific hours. Outside of those hours, the device is not your master. You are. Choose one deep work that has been delayed because of busyness. You will not begin the entire project. You will spend 3 focused hours on it this week. That is all. But you will begin. You will prove to yourself that you can choose what you do. Make a written list of what you will not do. Not things you cannot do. Things you will not do. Things you actively refuse because they do not serve your purpose. Keep this list visible and do it when necessary. This is your boundary. Then find one person doing the work you actually want to do and study how they protect their attention. How do they say no? What have they eliminated? What are they willing to disappoint people about? Learn from their practice. At the end of each day, ask yourself this single question. Did I give my attention to what I decided matters, or did I surrender it to what felt urgent? Do not judge yourself harshly, simply notice. Attention is built through practice, not perfection. And finally, remember this. You are not busy. You are distracted. And distraction is a choice, even when it does not feel like one. So remember, the problem is not time. The problem is attention, and attention follows choice. The three patterns that steal your attention are the illusion that urgency equals importance, the comfort of fragmentation, and the self-deception of substitution. And the three practices that recover your attention are clarity about what actually matters to you, fierce economy in how you spend your focus, and ruthless subtraction of what does not serve you. These are not new insights. They've been known for centuries, yet each generation must learn from them because each generation is offered new and more sophisticated ways to surrender their attention. You have the time. You have always had the time. What you lack is the willingness to claim it as your own. The question is not whether you will have distractions. You will. The question is whether you will continue to pretend they are not choices, or whether you will accept the weight and dignity of choosing, and then defending that choice. Do that, and you will build something real.